This is the Christmas watercolor postcard kit tutorial. I'm so excited that you're here and are trying out our kit. So today we are going to be painting the sheep in the night sky. So you're going to need to grab your postcard from the kit along with your paint palette and your brushes. And then also if you can grab a cup of water, a paper towel, and a paper plate or a plate that you don't mind getting some paint on, because it will come in really handy for when you're mixing your colors. I'm so excited you're here and I can't wait to have you join this tutorial and try it out. We'll jump right in. I'm going to start with the sky, and I like to start by wetting the sky. So use the bigger brush just so this goes a little bit quicker, but I will just get that whole sky wet. Okay, so now my sky is wet. I'm going to grab some of my blue and put it on there, and the sky being wet already will help this go on really easily. You will notice that the paint will come off of your palette really easily, so just be careful with how much water you get in there. I like to avoid this star just so we have the ability later to get the most yellow pigment in there, and it's hard to cover up dark. You want to work light to dark, so just be careful with that space there. Okay, so I have my blue on there. I do find with these postcards that it is easiest to get the paint on if you go with the pattern of the paper, so it kind of tends to be vertical lines in the paper. So if you do that vertically, it kind of just helps it go on a little smoother. Now I'm going to grab my green, and I want to use the palette a little bit to mess that up so I can get it a little more wet, because it's easier to get that on. Again, I've wet my grass space, avoiding my sheep, so that this goes on smoothly. Okay, so I have this first hill fully painted now, and I want to paint my back hills, but when I do these I want them to look further away, so I am going to mix my colors a little bit to make that color look a little more muted and a little more distant. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So I just want to refer to my color wheel. This is kind of how I remember how I want to color mix sometimes. So we have this green that's kind of between the yellow, green, and green, and directly across on my color wheel is red. So you'll see I have right here, if you add red, it kind of makes it a brown color. I don't want to add quite so much red, but it will mute my colors because it is directly across from it in the color wheel. It'll make them look a little bit more muted, and that's what I want for my hills in the back. So we're going to do that with the red on your palette right here. Okay, so I have my color. I just mixed it right on my palette there, but you can also grab just like a paper plate or a plastic plate that you don't mind getting a little bit of paint on, so that you have more space to mix if you would like. And then I'm going to get this on both of the back hills, doing a little bit lighter on this front one and then even darker on the back one. And if it's not dark enough for what I want, I'm going to add a little bit of brown too. Okay, so I have this filled in, and I just want to show you this highlighting technique over here. So what I've done is wet my paintbrush down and then just dab a little bit of the water out. And then I'm going to touch the tops of the hills right here and pull up a little bit of paint. You'll notice the water pulls, the brush pulls up that paint there. And it just kind of creates a highlight of the hill so that it looks like the moonlight is hitting it. And it will create a rough line if you pull too hard like I just did there. And so then I just want to kind of brush in some of the paint around it until it smooths out a little bit more, just so I don't have a hard line there. So I'm also going to take that same muted green tone that I have and just touch underneath of the sheep here. It's okay if you get around their legs, because we're going to go in with the brown on there. But I just want to create a little bit of a shadow around each of them. We just have a couple of things left on our sheep, and I just want to make this white look a little dirtier, because a sheep out in the field is not going to look quite so nice and white. So I'm going to take the brown and I'm going to really water it down with my little skinny brush. until there's hardly anything on there. So I'm even going to rinse my brush out and then wipe off any excess brown and then go back to my water and grab some of that paint. So it's really hardly any on there. And then I'm going to just create little shadows on my sheep so it looks like they have their fluff. So mostly on the bottom, leaving their upper back still white, and then coming up under their head. I'm going to do that on each of them. And I'm also just going to do a couple little dots on their back just so it looks like it has some of that fluffy texture. And you can also go back in. I'm going to do a little bit darker of a brown, so just getting a little bit more of that paint in there and doing that on the bottom of the belly where we already did that shadow, just so then it looks like it's fluffy down there too. Okay, while my sheep dry, I'm going to switch over and do my yellow. I'm going to have hardly any water on my brush, just enough to get my yellow kind of mixed up. And then I'm going to go up and fill in my star with almost just directly pigment. Just get enough water in there that you can move the paint around, but otherwise it should be mostly paint, not very much water, so that it fills in that space really, really heavily. Okay, so now I am just mixing a little bit of my blue and a little bit of my brown to make almost a black with those colors. It's a really dark brown, and filling in the sheep's head and then their legs as well with that same color. Okay, here is the finished product. Here is our sheep in the night field. And don't forget that if you want to get creative, you can throw some stars in the sky, add more little sheep or animals in there with the sheep in the field. And then also don't forget that you can write a little note on the back, and there's a spot for a stamp, and it's ready to go in the mail to a friend or family member.